Hi everybody, welcome to Curtin Corner. A few people are still logging in, so I'll do the intros and then we'll get into the session. So welcome everybody. I'm John Fullermore, the Executive Director of the John Curtin Institute of Public Policy. So welcome to our second Curtin Corner for 2021, and a special welcome to those of you who are new to Curtin Corner. I would like to begin, of course, by acknowledging the traditional owners of the various lands from which we are viewing today's webinar, and here in Perth, of course, that's the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. And wherever you are, on your behalf, I pay my respects to traditional owners and their elders, past and present. If you have not attended a Curtin Corner before, as I said, welcome. We've been running these seminars on Friday afternoons during semester for many, many years, at least 15 years. We normally, in the old days, pre-COVID, had them either here on campus or in the city, but we've now moved online. We're still thinking about whether we will hold one or two every semester in person, for those of you who want to catch up again, but at the moment, online seems to be working. And we have topics from around, speakers from around Perth and potentially now internationally or interstate on a variety of topics, both business and politics and policy, and with speakers from within the university and from outside. So today, of course, we have somebody who is from a business background, and other times we'll have people from a government background. All our talks are recorded and they will go up on our website. Curtin's website's doing a little bit of renovation at the moment, so it might take a little bit longer than usual, but all our talks from last year are on the JCIPP website, so you can always go there and check them out and tell your friends about them if they hadn't had a chance to look at them. So this one will be up on the website, we're just not quite sure when, but it will go up hopefully in the near future. For discussions and questions and answers, we use the Slido app, S-L-I-D-O. We did send you a link to that this morning, but you can just go to www.slido.com or download the app on your app store and enter an event code, which is D382. Repeat, D382. There's already a question up there because I put one on, so you know you're in the right spot. So I facilitate the questions and answers, and all you've got to do is type in a question or like somebody else's question, and that'll get the ball rolling. And I use the Slido on my phone, and you can watch the event on your computer. Now, to today's presentation, our speaker today is Dr. Doral Yosef. Doral's a managing partner and CEO of Laveau Global, and he's also a board director with and a founder of Cognitium Proprietary Limited, a global on-demand marketplace for executives and senior executives. And Doral will mention a little bit more about the whole role of on-demand executives and talent in his talk today. Over a 27-year career, Doral has worked in Australia, the US, Europe, Israel and the Middle East, including senior roles with PwC, Advision, KBR and Worley. He's got a PhD in applied mathematics and engineering from the University of Melbourne, and he studied corporate level strategy in an executive program at the Harvard Business School. He's a member of the Harvard Business Review's Advisory Council. He's a former chairman of the panel of experts at the World Future Energy Summit and a former non-executive director of Houston Partnership. So he's very well qualified, and it's great he's now back in Perth and hopefully going to be a good addition in partnering with us at Curtin. Curtin, of course, is very involved in issues surrounding work and organisations, firstly through our Future of Work Institute, and also more generally in our School of Management and Marketing. And much of the discussion up till now about on-demand gig work is focused at the lower end of the skills spectrum, you know, Uber drivers, Deliveroo riders, TaskRabbit workers, etc. And that's, of course, very important. But there is also the other end of the spectrum, and that's what we're looking at today. They're the search for freelance and on-demand talent, the high-end skill and executive level. So how are companies and organisations approaching this in an age where distance working is becoming more common, but managing these workers and integrating them into the business is not easy? So they're the sort of topics that Doral will hopefully address today and related issues. So Doral, once again, thank you very much for agreeing to be our speaker at today's Curtin Corner, and we're looking very much forward to what you've got to say. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, John. Hello, everyone. I can't see anyone, but hello, everyone. And I'm thoroughly delighted that you chose to spend this time with me today, listening to my talk about talent on demand and what it takes to run a successful blended strategy. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. It will take a second. and we'll get straight to it. Well, I hope everything is running smoothly.
It's running perfectly, Doral, just letting you know, it's all good.
All right, thank you very much. So again, the title of the webinar is Talent on Demand Marketplaces, and what do you need if you want to run a successful blended workforce strategy. I'm going to talk about, in general, about the on-demand marketplaces, the drivers, the supply and demand, the types of arrangements, and the business model. Then we'll move toward drilling in what types of platforms you can find worldwide. And then as a company, what kind of building blocks you need to put together and assemble in order to run a successful strategy. So let's start with this. The competition for talent is changing at speeds that we have not predicted, as many industries today and sectors operate in what I call high velocity markets. The high velocity markets are those markets in which you see a number of main characteristics: rapid fire technological changes, short product life cycles, rapidly evolving customer expectations, frequent launches of new competitive moves, and entry of important new rivals. But perhaps equally important is the fact that access to information today is relatively easy and at a relatively low cost. So how many on this call can identify their respective companies operating under these parameters? And so if you're a small or medium enterprise, the traditional way of attracting talent was that you hired the best applicant who responded to your ad, right? Usually that worked very well for you, as the employee market was always segmented by sector, subsector, and the talent demographics was such that you'd find the best talent in your sector, let's say oil and gas, conveniently located for you where the business was located. In this case, Houston, Aberdeen, Perth, or London, if you're in oil and gas. But as technology requirements are changing, the employee market landscape is also changing. And Ed Glasser research at Harvard shows that highly skilled technology talent today lives in specific countries and within the country in specific cities. So how do you access these new talent pools to address new and emerging technologies, to address operational or strategic challenges? Well, introducing the on-demand marketplaces, for which the value proposition is quite simple. Assemble the right expertise at the right time in the right place within the organization. So these on-demand experts from these platforms also come with an added benefit, and that is that they challenge your status quo, they stretch your worldview, they bring new thinking, they bring new insights, new possibilities, and force you to reassess sometimes institutionalized thinking in your company or dominant logic. So in a word, especially if you are an SMEs, this experts on demand may help you actually to reach escape velocity. So let's talk a bit about these on-demand marketplaces, the drivers, supply and demand, and what type of arrangements you can have. So I'd like to spend a bit of time on this slide because most companies face a serious challenge today. That is how to effect change in order to match the pace of innovation, the technology adoption, the delivery channels that the market requires. 89% of market capitalization today sits in intangibles. That is in supply chain management, IP, relationships, goodwill, brand, copyrights, patent, trademarks. In fact, around 25 trillion of S&P 500 in 2020 is set in intangibles. That is twice the US economy. So you need to attract high performance individuals, full-time or not, to help you enrich the amount of tacit knowledge and ideally harness those intangibles for institutional purposes. So let's look at some of the drivers. The global access to talent at scale. That is shrinking, and that is forcing businesses to compete asymmetrically. Companies also have a persistent requirement for labor force flexibility that allows them to experiment and innovate quickly and more efficiently. The external innovation. Well, the external innovation paradigm is changing too, from joint ventures, alliances, partnership toward internal innovation, accelerator, talent on demand, corporate venture capital. So there are many drivers that will make you think, where are we going? Supply-wise, in the US last year, 56 million, a staggering 36% of the workforce was involved in some form of freelancing work. Supply also comes from significant shifts in talent pools, in particular given by choices of single parents, female employment, and executive freelancing, all of which provide these marketplaces with ample supply of highly qualified talent. In 2019-2020, 32% of employees, mostly women, left full-time employment because of care responsibilities. Despite the fact that women in the US possess a master or a doctoral degree at a higher rate than men, they are involved in care responsibilities at a disproportionate rate when compared with their male counterparts. An interesting outcome from the Harvard survey is that freelance tech workers have a different, many say a healthier, and I'm one of them, understanding of what success means. They think and feel that the most important thing for them is to get leading edge expertise via multiple projects, multiple geographies, so they can remain relevant and marketable. They also engage in self-learning by a considerably higher margin, almost 4-to-1, when compared to their full-time workers, and feel they are solving more exciting, more diverse, more difficult problems than their counterparts within the full-time employment market. On the demand side, companies find that they need to conduct business remotely in geographies where talent demographics, in particular in the technology field, are scarce. One of the benefits of embracing the latest digital technology is allowing businesses to recruit and run talent remotely. Obviously, there are challenges posed by rethinking work processes, segmentation of work, and the overall cultural transformation. And so we saw in between 2000 and 2010, a number of such platforms starting to emerge. In 2009, there were around 80 globally, and today there are over 330 such platforms. Not all of them, obviously, in the professional services or what we call premium talent, of course, but we'll talk in a moment about these three types of platform. But suffice to say that the amount of investments made is considerable, and is estimated in 2020 to be over $2 billion. The business model, the overall business model is simple. It's difficult to implement, but it's simple. You have a cloud technology, you have a platform where experts join the platform via a screening process, not necessarily rigorous across the spectrum. And then you have clients coming in, posting a job brief, engaging with experts, and there is a bilateral engagement. So experts can look for obviously new and exciting projects, and clients can look for their expert. And Once the job is done, the platform takes a fee, the expert takes the fee, and that's the business model. Well, not difficult. But many companies today experience a disconnect between skills and capability necessary for long-term strategic positioning and those capabilities needed for short-term performance. So a disconnect, if you wish, between the exploration and exploitation phases on the company's journey. And markets are moving away from monopoly rents. What are these rents? These are rents created as a result of privileged market position at sector, subsector, and industry level. And they are moving toward what economists call Schumpeterian type rents. These Schumpeterian type rents are short-lived but more frequent bursts of competitive advantages, innovation, and even creative destruction. So if you look at, for instance, at the types of the workers who are subject to changes during COVID, they fall broadly into 4 categories. Workers who are transitioned, workers who are displaced, workers who are retained and recalled. And so you need to replace these people on the short-term basis or medium or long-term basis, which indeed correlates with the type of work you require. We see, for instance, that many of the long-term arrangements, those over 6 months or so, have an impact on the operational, functional, or product strategy. So they are quite strategic in nature, whereas the medium-term appointments are more tactical in nature. There is another thing that comes into play here. Pre-2010, the main mechanism to external innovation was via joint ventures, alliances, and partnerships. That's it, full stop. So these mechanisms are still in place today, but they are difficult to run, they are cumbersome to exit, they are not cost effective most of the time. Compare that with the external avenues that are at your disposal today, be that venture accelerators, talent on demand that we talk about, innovation labs, or even corporate venture capital. Another point I like to make is that over the past decade or so, 2 structural forces started to emerge, and both CEOs and investors alike are bothered by that. One is that the long-term view of the enterprise is becoming shorter. And secondly, and in a way correlated to that, is that half-life of skills also becomes shorter. And so businesses are under constant pressure to engage in various strategic initiatives so they go beyond legacy projects. In other words, businesses need to sense, and sometimes from far into the ecosystem, not necessarily from their immediate sector of industry. They need to sense, adapt, and if needed, reconfigure capabilities in order to remain relevant. This also produces new roles. Microsoft has now a head of creative delivery. NL has in Ernesto Chora a chief innovability officer. There are blended workforce experts jobs advertised these days. So it creates all sorts of opportunities within the company, outside the company. Now let's have a look at the types of platforms or types of these marketplaces. They fall under 3 broad categories. The first one is what we call premium talent marketplace, or professional, very close to what you would call professional services. And this is where companies like Comedge, the companies I founded, Cognitium, Talmix, another Australian great story, Expert 360, that is the realm where these companies sort of are active. The second one, as exciting, is crowdsource innovation marketplace. Companies like Innocentives and Kiggle, and we're going to talk a bit about those. And the third, is more geared towards the digital transformation. So there are the digital freelance marketplaces like Upwork and TopTotal and Fiverr and so on. An interesting survey undertaken by Harvard Business School with Boston Consulting Group reveals that over 90% of C-suite leaders believe that marketplaces for professional talent are important, whether it's very important or somewhat important, are important to their company's future competitive advantage. This is a very important outcome that strengthens the belief that these marketplaces are here to stay, and the fact that they are now an integral part of the global talent landscape. Not all premium, the first category, the premium talent marketplaces, not all of them operate in the same manner. So some operate more regionally, others have a global reach. All those colors on the graph are actual companies within the premium talent marketplace realm. So these premium talent marketplaces display an average seniority that is generally higher, superior to that in the digital market, in the third bucket, right? In the digital marketplace, such as Upwork. For instance, in Cognitium, over 90% of our experts base falls within the 50 to 25 years of experience range. Now, the second bucket, we're talking about crowdsourcing innovation or crowdsourcing marketplaces. These are extraordinarily large communities of technically sophisticated users. These crowdsource innovation platforms are complex and offer clients the ability to put together teams, actual teams, to solve challenging problems. For example, AstraZeneca used Innocentive solvers to develop a retrievable device to deliver oligonucleotides. For those not in the biotechnology, oligonucleotides are short, sophisticated single strands of synthetic DNA or RNA that serve as the starting point for many molecular biology and synthetic biology applications. Swiss giant Roche used the Innocentive platform also to develop a solution to measure clinical specimen in its internal R&D. And in the US, as you can see on this slide, another crowdsourcing platform called Freelancer has won a joint NASA Open Innovation Services contract. So you can imagine the freelancers on the Freelancer platform, how excited they must be working on NASA projects, not from within, but from outside. In all these cases, companies were able to widen the funnel of innovation without burdening themselves with expensive fixed costs. And that does a lot when you experiment, when you have a portfolio of innovation initiatives. Well, let's look a bit from an internal perspective. If you are a company, what kind of building blocks you need to put together, and how can you write a successful blended workforce strategy? Well, what is the value construct for that? Well, first of all, you may have to accept one of or more of these premises. I think that the smart enterprise of the future will require a constantly evolving rotation of system and skills, and a flexible and adaptable workforce. A new corporate approach to competitive advantage, I think, is necessary in the future, not just to reduce cost and close urgent skill gaps, but also to execute strategy with a blended workforce of specialists that is able to place the right skills in the right place at the right time in the organizations. Personally, I foresee that within the next 5 years, a robust blended workforce-led strategy will be probably the new norm. I believe that core full-time employees will evolve, and they will become more of a connectors of know-how, champions of collaboration, builders of social capital and collective intelligence. They will have a more strategic role in the company. And to effect these changes, the message has to be unambiguous. It needs to have the support of the C-suite, and it needs to be explicit and intentional. And the result of that is that you get an enterprise that is more agile, more resilient, and employees are engaging more strategically with the business. I had a meeting last week, I think was John, with Future of Work Institute, and I said, I don't think employees are interested to follow leaders today anymore. They're just not interested in that. They're interested in the act of co-creation. They want to feel part of the creation process, of the genesis process. Not just follow. Okay, well, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, and we'll follow. We follow the leader. This doesn't take anything away from the authentic leadership skills that one must have. But I think employees think a bit differently today. So as a business strategist, I'm passionate about learning how companies can execute strategy with a blended workforce, and actually what is the value construct for the culture under these new conditions. And I believe that once a business starts to engage more strategically with these on-demand marketplaces, a number of challenges, not insurmountable, will need to be addressed. They are there, and they will be there. So these challenges are largely, obviously, around people, processes, and technology. Technology-wise, for instance, data alone do not create competitive advantage. What creates competitive advantage, obviously, is the manner in which you extract, synthesize, and action intelligent decisions along the business continuum. In terms of people and processes, I believe that the full-time employee value proposition will change. And so the leadership has a crucial role in explaining A, the new competitive landscape, and B, what is expected from the employee of the future. The full-time core employee value proposition probably will entail a re-envisioning of their role in the company. Many of them will become, as I said, enablers of specialized work, connectors of work packages, and connectors of initiatives. And as a result, a cultural shift will take place so that the incoming on-demand experts be viewed not as a threat to the business, but as part of a blended workforce strategy geared for optimum delivery and quality. In so doing, I believe businesses must embrace ambidextrous leaders. There is no way around that. You can't run a blended workforce strategy with the leaders of the past. These types of leaders are the leaders who are comfortable with delivering outstanding outcomes for the short term, as well as delivering superior strategic positioning for the long terms. And they come at a cost, right? These leaders. But they must think strategically in terms of how they repackage the work in discrete parts, and how you deliver with a core and on-demand employees working symbiotically and optimally. And so the C-suite will become a more effective creator of collective intelligence, in my mind. And as a result, these leaders will end up with co-creators. That's what you want as a leader, right? You don't want to end up with the followers, point which I think I already made. you end up with co-creators. So the workers are more engaged. The workers are working optimally and symbiotically. And all these changes need to be reflected, obviously, in well thought out, clear and concise work policies and procedures, so that the enterprise has the ability not just to execute, but also to capture the know-how, to capture the tacit knowledge for institutional purposes. Over the past 2-3 years, there have been a number of prestigious studies by Harvard Business Group, by World Economic Forum, Boston Consulting Group, studies that looked into the future of work and in particular into the expertise on demand market. So for instance, we at Cognitium are now a sponsor and part of the first comprehensive study on expertise on demand with the University of Toronto, led by Professor Gerald Kupchik and John Younger. And I think it is important to understand the challenges in the way companies are led, operate, and adapt to technological and business model changes in this talent fluid future. So hopefully I'm in time. I think it's been 35 minutes or so. I'd like to thank you for your participation, and you are most welcome to ask questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Doral. That's great. And you've got a few questions, which is good. So that's always nice to know. People are paying attention and interested. So I'll just get straight into it. Just remind people, slido.com. If you go to Slido, our code for this event is D382. So clearly some people have worked out how to do it, so I'm sure others can as well. So Doral, there's a couple of questions here. There's two actually sort of connected about remuneration. I mentioned to you before, I was interested in how important financial remuneration is to this on-demand talent. You know, does the lack of certainty mean they demand more money, or does it mean the flexibility means they don't need as much? And someone else also wanted to know, was it just determined by market forces, or is it determined, I guess, by the law of the land of the company who you're working for, if they're in Israel or if they're in Australia or in the US? So where does remuneration come in?
Well, with the second part of your question, it is an unregulated. If you want sort of to compare these freelancers with anything, I would compare them with artists, right? So it's sort of, you look at the expertise, you know you need this kind of expertise, and you look at the freelancers there and say, this guy implemented the cybersecurity at Adobe or Google or whatever. He asks for this kind of remuneration. It is a question of if you can afford it or not. I don't think there is a lot of bargaining within that dialogue. I mean, I certainly don't see that. We, for instance, at Cognitium, we agreed with our experts to have just two rates for more senior executives and less senior executives. But I think it's sort of, if you can afford, you will have the expertise, and the more you are willing to pay for it, the better expertise you have. That's my view. Obviously, it's not a regulated market, and I don't think in the near future it will be a regulated market. And I'm not sure, if you look at, you know, Patty McCord's legacy at Netflix, I'm not sure you really want a regulated or even over-regulated market in this area. You want high caliber expertise at top prices, and will come at top prices. It will come at top prices. That is my view. Obviously, when you look at digital freelancers, so those with 10 to 12 years of experience, obviously someone located in India or you know, in Bangalore, for instance, is much cheaper than than someone located in Israel. So for instance, I'm an Israeli as well, as being Australian, we build our platform in Israel, and they come at a premium price. And well, they ended up with us, they ended up with the company, but this is how we started. This is how we started engaging with those kind of with that kind of talent. But at the higher level, in the professional services arena, I think you'll see you'll see the remuneration being a bit more uniform.
Just continuing on about this issue, to some extent a regulation type issue, Bruce asks, what issues have emerged when people have done short-term work for one company and then they have an opportunity to work with one of that company's competitors? I mean, of course, this happens all the time, just with local expertise and local outsourcing and insourcing. But what about when you've got a global issue here? How does that work?
I don't think it's that different from a full-time employee. So for instance, I used to work for KBR in Houston. I moved more or less in the same role with Worley back in Australia. It makes an appeal to your ethics. It makes an appeal to your contract, obviously, but I do not see this as being different. And these freelancers, they sign a confidentiality contract. So it's not like they engage and then they take that body of knowledge and deploy it somewhere else. There are IP rights, there are contractual obligations that they need to follow as well. So not much different from full-time employment.
Because I'm just thinking in terms of, I mean, we often think about the on-demand employment market at the lower end, and all the risk there is pretty much being taken by the contractor, by the freelancer, so the the Deliveroo rider gets knocked over, by a truck or a bus as they're delivering their pizzas. The other one's taking a lot of the risk, and that's a lot of the criticism. Whereas in this area where you're getting, if you like, at the high end, the high skill end, a lot of the risk actually falls upon the company doing the employing rather than with the freelancer. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, it is a fair comment. Yeah.
Okay, let's have a look. We've got a couple other questions here. How should issues around knowledge loss or knowledge be managed if talent is acquired on demand and then the talent moves on? That's actually which is always a huge issue within a company in terms of knowledge management and corporate memory, the whole thing. I mean, if the company becomes a shell or a tiny core and it's basically bringing in talent from all around the world, fantastic. It's got a much bigger pool to choose from. What actually is the company? How do you actually retain the knowledge? Or doesn't it matter anymore?
Well, this is when I said that companies are in need of sophisticated leaders, or what I call ambidextrous leaders, what Tushman used to call ambidextrous leaders. In other words, you have someone who's working with your CFO who's not maybe skilled enough to put your company up for an IPO. So you get a high-power CFO for 3 months. He works hand in glove with your CFO. Now, it is up to me as a company and as a leader in the company to harness and to capture that tacit knowledge that this person imparts, somehow to capture and institutionalize it. And that's not a simple process. But if you have a robust knowledge management system in the company, it shouldn't be difficult. It shouldn't be difficult to capture all this knowledge that percolates through that assignment. And the more successful you are in doing that, then the more benefit you get out of that expert. He's not just comes in and goes. It comes in, imparts knowledge, capture knowledge, goes out, and you may go back to him again. But you capture, you may not capture 100% of that knowledge, right? So, but if you capture, there are 5 or 6 areas where that person excels, and you capture 90% of it, of each of the areas, you capture 66% of the entire body of knowledge that he has to offer. Within the parameters of that, with 0.9 of to the power of 5 or whatever. So you have to have leaders in the company who need to think, how do I deliver smartly? How can I deliver, and how can I, the tacit knowledge that comes through in and out through the company? How do I capture some of that? And that can be done.
I guess related to that is another one, another question about how can the acquired on-demand talent be used to upskill existing employees? Because the knowledge that they're transferring is not just task knowledge in terms of doing a particular project, but clearly they're often working with your own employees. So therefore, I mean, is that actually
mentoring? Yeah.
Actual, is that a big part of the demand for?
At the higher level, it is, because, and most of these freelance executives end up in a what I would call full-time role or close to a full-time role. So that is a problem, but it is up to you as a C-suite or as a CEO to say, well, I don't think we are strong in this particular area, and we need someone to mentor us or to mentor our team to bring it to to reach escape velocity, right? To bring it to the launching ramp. And employees, the full-time employees, shouldn't have a problem with that. Theoretically, shouldn't have a problem, because they learn more. They feel more engaged with the business. They learn from the best, and whether or not that particular expert ends up as a full-time employee remains to be seen. But it is slightly different when you think, how do I capture that knowledge? That is a bit more different than capturing the knowledge of an expert who is more or less at the same level with where your core full-time employees are.
I guess, and then the flip side of that is, how do people who are on the platforms, the freelancers, how do they upskill their own? How do they upskill? Do they just do that at their own expense, or are there other
Yes.
out there to help them? And how do they upskill and then get acknowledged and recognised through credentials or whatever for their skills? Because I mean, on the one hand, the point of these platforms is to put A with B, but A needs to know what B's skills are. They need to know they're recognised. They need to know what they're good at, and B wants to be able to upskill over time. So how does that sort of, in a sense, it's an education and training and credential sort of issue there, because you want to know what you're buying, and they want to be able to sell, and they want to be able to put on to the platforms that, well, I've got these sorts of qualifications. Okay, if you've got Harvard, an MBA, that's one thing, but the sort of skills you're talking about are often tacit, like you just mentioned. So how do they A, upskill, and B, credentialize their upskill?
So practically the questions are, how do they upskill? Well, first of all, they upskill, as I said, there is empirical evidence here, lots of research. They go and do on their expense their own courses, the courses that they think have the most impact on their ability to be more marketable and to work in a larger variety of projects, and they do that upskilling by a margin of 4-to-1 to the regular employee who takes an upskill course offered by the company. And when you are a freelancer, you go and you upskill, and you know that will pay off in time. Whereas if you are a full-time employee of a company, the Harvard Business School survey shows that the CEO and the upper management expects a return on investment in the 68% of them in the first 12 months. And sometimes that return doesn't come in the first 12 months. So yes, the freelancers and also the executives, you will find them that they are everywhere. They do courses and so on. Now, the second part of the question was about recognition. Well, the recognition is via the work that they do. When you employ a full-time employee from another company, so let's say you are with PwC for the sake of an argument, and you decided to have a change, knock at the doors of Deloitte, and Deloitte said, yeah, okay, let's look at what you did at PwC and so on. It's a very simple process. And that's a very narrow lens, really narrow lens. When you look at a freelancer, right, from Berlin or from Israel, and let's say he's an expert in cybersecurity. He worked implemented 5 or 6 such projects in a variety of cultures, in a variety through a variety of arrangements, both for small and large. So the funnel, the lenses are much wider. In fact, I would venture to guess, and this may come as a surprise, that sometimes employing a well-graded freelance from some of these platforms is you end up to be more successful with that particular engagement than employing a full-time employee who did exactly the same job in another company. So who's going to sort of challenge your worldview? Who's going to unlock the hidden value and bring new insights and so on? He brings the same insights maybe from another company.
I guess the issue is more how do you validate? Is it the platform's job or the freelancer's job, if you like, to validate the qualifications or the experience they say they've got?
Yeah.
Because there's a risk for the company employing them. This person on paper on the computer from Berlin looks fantastic. Let's give it a go. But you might be a bit more comfortable if Cognitium or the platform, or if has something that says, here's 3 recommendations from a person, or they've got a qualification or some sort of certificate that says they did this course.
Yeah.
I mean, just how do you, if you like, increase the knowledge of what the person can do?
Absolutely. So first of all, companies, for instance, like ours, there is a company that I like quite a lot, a competitor of ours in Germany called Comatch. These reputable platforms employ quite a stringent screening process. Now, if you are in the professional services arena, and if you are in that band of CEO to CEO -2, it is actually quite easy to validate the incoming experts, because they've been visible for the past 20 to 25 years to the business community. Their achievements are publicly recognized and so on. So it's an easier process. If you have to validate people who are joining from Berlin and or Tel Aviv, whatever, with 10 to 12 years of experience, that becomes a more difficult process. So therefore, the client is sort of looking at it in a different way. They may require some of those credentials, they may require some testimonies and so on. So there is a bilateral dialogue that takes place based on how confident the 2 parties are. But that dialogue is there, and usually lasts, for weeks, for 2, 3, 4 weeks before an expert doesn't just get picked up, unless it's something you want to do quickly on Fiverr and it's a simple task and so on. But if you plan to get someone at a tactical or even strategic level, then the dance prior to engagement is quite a long one.
Okay, a couple other questions here. One was, do the people on the platform, do they only work as individuals, or do they sometimes bid, if you like, as pairs or groups, or in which case they might become companies, or do they always individual X?
Yeah, so platforms have predilection for how they want to operate. So for instance, the platforms in the first bucket, in the professional services or premium talent, most of them, not all, most of them prefer that their experts work on an individual basis. But there are within that bucket, there are platforms that put teams together. However, there are platforms that specialize, like Innocentive and Kaggle, that specialize in putting teams together. This is what they do. They just put teams together for huge challenges. And there are quite a number of platforms there. So these business models are quite different. And it is very rare that a client comes to, let's say, to one of the premium talent platforms and say, can you assemble the team for me? When there are platforms there who specialize exactly in that very business model.
Sure. Another question was about, again, it's almost about what services do the platforms provide. Do they advise on, I don't know, tax issues, legal issues, or is that up to the freelancers, or is that up to the employers, the employing company? Because I assume, working in a global marketplace here, the potential for tax avoidance or for is pretty rife, but also the potential maybe for being captured, within a tax net of one country, and you didn't actually realise you were going to have to face that, is also quite real. So, who gives the advice on, and law and the legal side of things as well in terms of liability? Because I assume this is mainly for professionals. I'm trying to work out the regulations. You said it was an unregulated business at the beginning, but clearly you can imagine professional bodies providing advice, or other platforms themselves almost becoming quasi-professional bodies for these types of talent experts.
Yeah, it is a bit of a gray area. I'm not sure if I have a perfect answer to this, but what I can tell you is that from the expert side, experts are aware about the tax implications. They usually reside in a country. They don't move a lot. They reside in a country. They offer those services from that. So for them, being aware of the tax implications, it's generally not seen as a problem. In terms of the client, the contractual matters vary from platform to platform. So for instance, a client can go into a platform and have a contract directly with the expert outside the platform. Still the payment comes to the platform and so on, but their contract is between the expert and the company. And there are other platforms whereby the client contracts basically with the platform, and the platform contracts with that, and the client pays the platform, which in turn pays the expert. So it's and there are tax implications, but these are not difficult things to be sorted out. Company-wise, I'm pretty sure every company will understand, well, we need to pay this expert who's located in Berlin, is not located in Australia. These are the tax implications. Probably a very simple matter. I'm not an accountant. And if he's located in Australia, he needs to have an ABN. We pay the ABN, not a problem. So I don't see this as an impediment in attracting. It's sort of like not seeing the forest from the trees. I mean, the objective for you as a company is to have the right expertise when you need it and where you need it. And everything else, you have to work in the background and sort it out. But that should not drive your decision-making process.
Sure. And I mean, from your experience, which types of companies and which type, well, obviously the US is the one you looked at primarily. So which countries are doing it? Is Australia getting into this game? And also which types of skills and expertise and talent are the most in demand? Are we talking about?
Right. That's a long story here. So Australia, I actually have a chart. I think when we upload the presentation as well in the PDF format, you'll see some charts there. country by country, the premium expert marketplaces, what share of the overall freelance community is. All right. All the OECD countries are well and truly into this talent fluid global market. So in the professional services arena, for instance, between 25 and 30% of all freelancers are providing advice as a top level expertise, between 25 and 30% across the 38 countries in OECD. That is driven actually by Europe, United States, Australia is quite high, but there is another region that is absolutely booming in terms of this type of expertise being available, being rendered very nicely and seamlessly, and that is the GCC. So for instance, we don't divulge many secrets, but in Cognitium, GCC is #1 pool of experts for us.
For those who don't know, the GCC, they're talking about the Gulf.
Gulf Cooperation Council. So the 6 countries in the GCC: United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Oman. An absolute, a very rich pool of expertise, mid-level and superior expertise that is available at a much higher rate than anywhere else in the world. Singapore is making progress to that, but is not where Europe is. It's certainly not where United States is, and Australia is quite high there as well.
So the Gulf is seeking the talent, or the Gulf is providing the talent?
Both.
Both. Okay, sure. Okay, well, speaking of talent, you've provided and demonstrated quite a lot, but it's also about 5 o'clock. I think my questions are drying up, so I think I might have to call it a day there, Victoria. But I think this is an area of great interest, and I did say at the beginning, our Future Work Institute, I know, is interested in it. They're doing a lot of work on teams, virtual teams. So this sort of experience provides all sorts of great research opportunities as well as business opportunities. Because how do you deal with, and ever since the COVID thing, of course, with working from home, that's just exploded now in terms of virtual teams and the possibilities at international level as well. So I think it really is a very timely presentation. As I've said to everybody, we'll be putting up on our website soon, and hopefully you can learn more about this down the track. And it's great that website at your presentation, Doral, had a list of things to read. That'll be very helpful. I'll go and check those out. And so I recommend it.
Yeah, I can make those available to those interested. Just email me, and yeah.
Sounds great. Okay, so thank you once again. That was terrific, and we'll talk again soon. And everybody, please get your friends and your colleagues to have a look at the presentation if they weren't able to do so today. Okay, so that almost brings us to the end of Curtin Corner. Just quickly finishing with our talk next week, 26th of March, same time, same place. Associate Professor Crystal Abaddon. She's a early career researcher here at Curtin, but she's talking about the governance and regulation of the influencer industry. I think that's an area that we probably need to know a lot more about, because both from a business point of view and also from a government point of view, what are online influencers doing, how they're regulated, how they come about, and they can be used for good or ill, I'm sure. So Crystal next week will tell us all about the influencer industry. So hopefully you can come in and tune in next week, and we'll see you again. So thanks very much for your attendance, and we'll see you at a future Curtin Corner.